you have a person like that believes in the product and is willing to entertain investing in the product, I just hit the ground running. And so I just started doing it. And then at some point I realized, okay, I can't keep doing my full-time job. I need to shift 100% to getting this business off the ground. Now, ultimately, like a lot of investors, this is another thing, people need to understand. It doesn't matter who you are. I don't care if you're Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, or, whoever. It takes a lot to raise money. So don't get discouraged by hearing, 100 no's, right? I mean, that's typical. You're going to hear no's, 10x the amount of time you're going to hear yeses. So ultimately, he didn't invest. But at that point, I was so far into the process that there was no turning back.
Welcome to another episode of Everything Intellectual Property. Today, we have a very special guest with us. This gentleman has took a problem that he faced with oversweating and shirts with armpit stains and has invented an undershirt that is sweat-proof. Please help me welcome the founder and the CEO of Thompson Tee, Billy Thompson. How's it going, Billy?
Hey, I'm doing good, David. Thank you for having me on.
No, for sure, absolutely. And I know, hey man, we're kind of talking it up prior to kind of jumpstarting this interview. So I know this was going to be pretty good. And I know I was talking to you about the fact that 2012 started the business, and 13 years later, what they say the average business fails within a few years. So the fact that you have kind of been around for over a decade and kind of weathered the storm of COVID, it seems like, hey man, it's a good time to be you. But I guess for the audience, and just so they can get an understanding of what it is that you've created, can you maybe explain or describe the Thompson Tee?
Yeah. So it is an undershirt that blocks underarm sweat. So there's a small percentage.
Here.
Oh yeah, there you go. There's a small percentage of the population, about 3 to 5%, that deal with a condition called axillary hyperhidrosis, which is excessive sweating in the underarms beyond any physiological need. And so about another 35% of the population deals with it on a situational basis, right? Whether they're in an interview, first date, wedding. And there wasn't any real solution. And obviously this, like a lot of inventions out there, this was born out of necessity, right? And so this was an issue that I dealt with starting in junior high, right around puberty, right? And so from that point moving forward, I was wearing undershirts under everything, right? And so now, luckily for me, back when I was in high school and junior high school, baggy clothes were trending, right? They were in. So that was, that helped. That helped a lot because you could wear big baggy clothes. It wasn't tight. So if you had an undershirt underneath there that captured that sweat, then you were in good shape. And so, having that sort of intimate understanding and experience of the problem, I always thought, well, if there was an undershirt that just prevented that sweat from passing through, then boom, problem solved. And I grew up in a pretty small town in Pennsylvania. And so a couple guys in my circle of friends, there was like 2 or 3 guys that had the same issue. So I thought, wow, if just in this small little, community, in this small little high school, if there's 2 or 3 guys that have this problem, then you extrapolate that across the US or even across the world, you're like, wow, this is, there's a lot of people that are dealing with this, that there's no real solution for, right? So I thought this was probably the most convenient, safe, and affordable way to get it done. And that's really where the product was born.
So at what point, because it seems like your background, West Virginia, marketing, seems like you had a lot of sales jobs coming up.
Yes.
At what point did you say, because it seems like sales has to be far enough different from, starting a business, being a founder, being an owner. So at what point did you say, man, you know what, I can do this even though my background, obviously sales helps out with businesses, and everybody needs sales, but I would imagine that taking on that CEO or the ownership founder role is completely different from just kind of being on the phones day in or day out trying to kind of make sales. So at what point did you say, okay, let me make a business out of it? And did you have any trepidation based on kind of not maybe the unknown, I should say?
Yeah, I studied marketing. I remember studying marketing and choosing marketing because it was probably at that time the most entrepreneurial business degree that I thought, because I didn't want to get into accounting. I didn't want to get into finance. I thought, well, and I was always fascinated with sort of how products sort of earned and etched out their position in the minds of the consumers. Like that, why does someone pay, $5,000-$10,000 for a watch, right? Why does someone pay, so the way that these products could position themselves, I always thought, well, there are definitely superior products out there, but because they're marketed wrong, or they're not marketed as well as the leaders, then they don't succeed, or they don't take away that market share. So I always thought that was an interesting dynamic. And again, looking at marketing, the 4 Ps, it covered sort of a lot of the dynamics that go into a business. And then sales, I fell into sales just because of my sort of my background, my personality, that, I enjoyed the flexibility of it. It was, in hindsight, my first job out of college was with a .com, and I was able to network with the CEO there, who had done a lot of things. And, he really planted this sales bug into my brain, because he said, "Hey, listen, nothing happens until somebody sells someone something," right? Meaning, and that could be even if you're in a group and you're trying to, present an idea. It could, so it's really true, right? And so
Yes.
I thought, all right, he said, go out and get some bona fide sales experience. And I ended up, getting a job with Pitney Bowes, which was at the time, well, it still is, an office equipment. And what they were selling were postage meters that would put postage on letters and whatnot. And Pitney Bowes had a reputation of being like Xerox, right? I mean, if you can go out and you can slang, go door to door, knocking on doors and slang office equipment, right? You get poached, really, because they know that these guys are trained up, they're ready to go. And so from there, I met my now wife there. I mean, she went on to do pharmaceutical sales. And then literally from there, I had a little stint in the entertainment industry when I went to work for the William Morris agency. Because again, people thought, oh, you could be a really good agent, because I was in LA at the time. And then, that's really why I ended up, prior to starting Thompson Tee, I was selling private jet time, right? Basic
Wow.
private jets, right?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
yeah, right. So, the Marquis jet or net jets and flex jet, you buy 25, 50-hour blocks of, it's like a fractional share of private jets, right? And so the reason why that recruiter called me was because of that job I had at Pitney Bowes, which is really, really crazy. So that helped a lot. And so when I got into that world, I realized I didn't want to be an agent in Hollywood. And so, I was looking for something, and really in the biotech space. But then this recruiter called me about this private jet stuff, and I jumped all over it, and I killed it for them. And what was really important, I mean, obviously being able to talk to high net worth individuals, and we're talking, the top 1% of the 1%, right? Because, even celebrities and athletes have a difficult time justifying the cost of flying privately, right? And so every day I got to talk to these guys and gals and figure out how they did what they did, and hear their stories, which was really cool. And one of my clients, I had pitched him an idea, and they expressed interest in it. So that was really all I needed to make the transition. When you have a person like that believes in the product and is willing to entertain investing in the product, I just hit the ground running. And so I just started doing it. And then at some point I realized, okay, I can't keep doing my full-time job. I need to shift 100% to getting this business off the ground. Now, ultimately, like a lot of investors, this is another thing, people need to understand. It doesn't matter who you are. I don't care if you're Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, or, whoever. It takes a lot to raise money. So don't get discouraged by hearing, 100 no's, right? I mean, that's typical. You're going to hear no's, 10x the amount of time you're going to hear yeses. So ultimately, he didn't invest. But at that point, I was so far into the process that there was no turning back. And so we bootstrapped the business, my business partner and I think it was 10 grand a piece. Right. And then, I was running off. I was supplementing my, my living expenses. Living in Southern California was expensive. So I was, racking. I racked up $100,000 in credit card debt. And one of the credit card companies did a story on it, because it was like, oh, wow, you use this. I kept shifting all these 0% interest, balance transfer deals. I kept shifting them over, to keep that cash going, right? So for 2 years, you're not getting paid. And, we started burning down the savings. And we were weeks away from personal bankruptcy, my wife and I. And so it's really one of those stories where, it worked out for us, thankfully. And we just turned the corner, and things kind of took off and went up from there. So I was very fortunate. But to answer your question, I think if anyone's going to get into sort of any entrepreneurial endeavor, I would say if there was one skill that I would say you should probably learn, it's sales. I honestly think anybody can benefit from learning basic sales skills, right? And there was a book that I read when I was interning at that .com company called Selling to the Veto, which is a very important top officer. And what that did was put you in the mindset of reaching decision makers and being able to speak their language. And lo and behold, I applied it when I was at this company, and that's exactly how I got into network with this CEO. And he became a mentor of mine, which helped out great. So again, I don't care what your background is, what you decide to do in your life. I think everyone should have. There should be a fundamental sales class in every business college, right? Just so you can understand that ability to navigate sort of even the basic sales process. So
No, and I agree with you 100% with that. I know it's a lot of times salesman gets this bad rep, but we are all either we're essentially all selling. You know, whether you go into a job
yes,
interview or
exactly,
in applying for it,
exactly,
you're trying to sell yourself to that entity, whatever
exactly.
the
Yes,
case may be. So we're all salesmen, whether you want to look at it like that. I know,
yes.
the salesman get that, the car salesman kind of
Of course,
they get
yeah,
that rep, whatever the
yeah,
case may be. But we're all at a fundamental level, salesmen, and I know that's one of those things that we talk at nauseum offline about how the educational system is maybe working not the right way or maybe the way it's intended to work. But that's another skill that should be, I think, even in high school where you're kind of teaching sales and the importance of sales because everything is sales. And trust
yeah,
me, to get what you want,
exactly.
you're going to need to sell somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And at the end of the day, I mean, it's one of the highest paying professions out there too, right? I mean, especially if you land, if you land an enterprise software deal or, there's just ways to make a lot more money if you're selling and you're getting on a commission structure. You can make really good money out there. And the flexibility is there too, right? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's challenging, right? To be able to month in, month out, you got quotas, you got to get up there in front of people, you got to hear your nose, you got to, fight your way to close deals. I mean, it's definitely there. But at the same time, you have some flexibility and autonomy in how you go about your day and schedule your day and go out and do it. And I thought that was really cool too for myself to be able to do that and kind of plan my day and be sort of the controller of my time.
No, for sure. And another interesting thing that you said just about the word no, and I think this is similar to sales. Well, I think people are scared to get to hear the word no, especially over and over again. I was
Right.
interviewing Jacob Robinson, I think is his last name. He invented Dig World. That's, I think it's at least one location in Katy, Texas, and he was on Shark Tank this past season and ended
Mm.
up striking a deal. But he was saying how for 2 years he's calling people about the ideal and or what he was trying to do, and he heard no for 2 straight years until that one person said yeah and was crazy enough to believe in his ideal. And next thing you know,
Yeah.
it was a construction theme park. So you only need
Yeah.
one person to believe you, believe in you.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And they used to teach us in sales that every no is one step closer to a yes. And so when you're when you understand your sort of pipeline, your prospecting, your pipeline, it's just a math. It's a math formula at that point. You know that you're gonna have to talk to 10 people. You're gonna get 3 interested, and then one's gonna close. So that way, if you got a 10% close rate, which is fairly high, but if I'm just doing it for illustrative purposes, but that okay, if I hear 7 no's, well, I'm gonna get my 3 prospects. So every no, literally, statistically, will be once you know your ratios, will be one step closer to a yes. So if you reframe it that way, and I was thrown into the fire. I mean, here I was in LA, we were going door to door. Nobody wants to talk to the postage meter guy, right? So we literally, we had to just
For sure.
knock on doors, right, and pop in and try and sell stuff. So cutting your teeth that way helps a lot too to get over that sort of apprehension or whatever fear might be involved with making that call. So but yeah, it definitely takes a certain personality. Is it a skill that I think anyone can ultimately learn? For sure. If you put yourself through it, you're gonna, just like everything else. You could force yourself to learn it. But yeah, I think it's invaluable. It's a great skill to have for anyone.
No, for sure. I was kind of talking about being out of Vegas this past weekend, and you have an idea of how it's going to go until you're going out there and you're asking people, "Hey, can I ask you a question on camera?" And you get a fair amount of no's, which again it was what it was. But like you said, it's kind of
Yeah.
getting closer to that yes and kind of understanding. Yeah, you're kind of getting information. Okay, in terms of like the architect of a person who maybe is going to be on camera compared to who's probably not just going, who's always going to say no. So you start to kind of pick up information to kind of use going forward when you're asking people to tweak the pitch. And man, it was cool. But I think, yeah, definitely that was something that, and obviously I heard a fair amount of no's in my lifetime, but just kind of going out there thinking that this thing is going to be, hey man, we're going to be out here for about 30 minutes or an hour. And next thing you know, we're out there for 2, 3 hours just asking people.
Yeah.
And we ultimately
Yeah.
got the job done. But yeah,
No,
no
of
was a big
course.
part of overcoming this past weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you're building this podcast, you put these guests on here. I mean, that's prospecting, right? I mean, you had to reach out, you sent me an email, so you get the whole gist of the intro and then kind of move them along and whatnot. So there's definitely, sales skills right there. So again, nothing happens till somebody sells somebody something.
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. So you talked about, okay, you guys started with the 20,000, going in credit card debt for 100,000. And then
Mhm.
ultimately, what would you say was your, something that kind of helped you out? And I know we'll talk about the Shark Tank experience because you were, I think it was season 8, if I'm not mistaken. But in
Yeah.
2019, you guys got up to a point where, if I'm correct, 1 million shirts sold, which I would imagine that has to be a big kind of boost in saying, okay, this is something that the people need, or the people want, I should say.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, it was I wish, I mean, that sort of silver bullet moment of having Shark Tank, which has been amazing. And I mean, that didn't happen until, I mean, we opened our e-commerce store in 2012. Shark Tank, I don't believe, aired till 2017. So there was, 5 years in there. Now, unfortunately, we built it slow and steady, right? I mean, the first year we did 90,000 in sales, which was nothing, right? I mean, by comparison, because now we can do 90,000 in a weekend. Um, but to spend an entire year, here I am looking at, oh my gosh, how much do we need to get to for me to have enough margin to actually cover my living expenses? Like, we ain't gonna make it. We got a long way to go, right? Like a long way to go. I mean, to spend an entire year grinding away trying to get this thing moving, it was like, man, this ain't gonna happen. And I remember my wife at the time was just like, hey, listen, my wife, not at that time, meaning my wife now, but at that time, she was like, listen, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And that was a reminder to keep telling myself, no, you're right. I mean, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And then it wouldn't be significant, right? And so I had to remember to keep it going. And then the next year, we went to 500,000, right? And it was like,
Mhm.
okay. And then from there, it was like, okay, there was enough margin after 2 years to think, okay, maybe I could start paying myself a little bit. And then we went to 1 million, then we went to 2 million, then we went to 4 million, right? So it was going, and we built it in large part through obviously some digital marketing. We had that dialed in, the basics and fundamental digital marketing, which was way easier back then than it is now. And then also, we relied heavily on PR, right? We were on, I think, one of the early big PR hits was, there's a show called The Doctors where they had a panel of doctors on this show. It was a daytime show, and one of the doctors actually had axillary hyperhidrosis, and so they put our product on there, and we thought it was so funny. We thought, here we go. We're going to the moon, right? Like, here it is. Get ready for it. My business partner and I were like, went up to LA, did the show and all this stuff, everything, and then it aired. We're like, oh yeah, let's just sit back and watch these orders. And it didn't happen. It didn't happen like that, right? It was like a couple did trickle in, but it was so low and it was so below our sky high expectations. I remember that afternoon because this starts running on the East Coast, makes its way over. We were a little bummed out. I remember talking to him like, you know what, dude, I'm gonna shut it down this afternoon, right? Like, I'm done. I'm done. But what it did was each PR hit would bring us to a level, and we sustain that level, and then it would bring us to the next level, and then it would bring us to the next level, and then adding Amazon. At the time when we first started, we weren't selling on Amazon, and then we added Amazon, and then that accounts for like 40% of our business right now. So I wish we had this big, aha moment where all of a sudden sales just took off. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, going from 90 to 500, 500 to a million, million to 2 to 4. I mean, that's all. And then, eventually 4 to 8. So to do that is astronomical, especially
Yeah.
being bootstrapped with $20,000, right? I mean, that's very difficult to do. And then, so we ended up hitting that million shirt mark, I think back in 2018, but we're actually at 3 million shirts cumulative now. Because obviously in those early years you're not selling as many,
Right.
and as you get into these
Now it's
part of the years, yeah, so we're cranking them. But it was again just as slow and steady. I hate to say it, but because we're direct to consumer, we didn't have any wholesale, so we weren't in retail. We literally built this one customer at a time. And I remember I was doing the customer service, I was doing the order fulfillment. I remember filling up this old truck that I had with a few orders going down to the post office, right, every day. And then, flash forward a few years and we got these big, huge bins, and the post office is coming to us. So it was happening very fast. And fortunately, we dodged a lot of major issues to keep our cash flow, to preserve the cash flow. My business partner and I are very fiscally aligned. So we were pouring money back in. We were just growing the business. And so
Yep.
that's kind of how it happened. And then, of course, when Shark Tank hit in 2017, I mean, that was huge, right? I mean, that's, there was a study done by one of the consulting firms that's the equivalent of like $3 to $4 million worth of advertising. And
Yep.
so being on the show and whatnot, and that really helped, which was a crazy process in and of itself. But yeah, that helped a lot. It still runs in syndication, so when it's playing rerunning somewhere, we see a little bump in the analytics. Yeah, yeah. So and that helped us out a lot. I think that pushed us from that $4 million to $8 million mark,
Yep.
which was big. But yeah, it was a felt like a pretty slow and steady grind. It wasn't like we had this all of a sudden explosive thing that happened early on where, oh my God, we're sold out of everything and we got it. So unfortunately that never happened.
But no, again, to your point, just kind of taking a look at your guys' website, I think from 2012 to 2019. So what, that's 7 years. 7 years, you get 1 million shirts. And then from 2019 to 2022, you guys do 2 million. And it seems like
Yeah.
like you said, it's kind of almost like a well-oiled machine now. Even though you guys had to build it brick by brick, which is cool. I guess kind of moving on to the Shark Tank experience, I would imagine that it's maybe still some similarities in terms of applying now as it was back then. But what was your guys' mindset to say, hey, we need to go on Shark Tank? Because I think Shark Tank was like maybe even more popular maybe back then.
Oh yeah.
But what was your guys'
Yeah.
mindset to say, hey, we need to go on Shark Tank and kind of get this out to the world? Maybe get a deal, but definitely get that kind of, like you said, that massive advertising.
Yeah, well, that was basically it. We saw the power of PR, and we didn't think like a product of ours. And Oprah was winding down her stuff. I mean, she was the queen of PR, right? You get like Sarah Blakely Spanx. As soon as Oprah pimped her, I mean, it was over, right? I mean, it blew up. So she had the Midas touch. I mean, whatever she touched turned to gold. And I think she had wind down her show and had started her network. And plus, I don't know if a product of ours would have been really applicable. So, you're looking at, okay, what are the next big hitters out there? And Shark Tank is this phenomenon, right? And so we applied a bunch of times to Shark Tank, and I'll never forget when the casting director finally called me one day. I was actually sick home with the flu, and I was out. And I got a call from my office saying, "Oh, Shark Tank just called." And I was like, "What?" So I rallied, right? I rallied. I called them back. And my last name is Thompson. It's the Thompson Tee, and coincidentally, the girl who I spoke to, her last name was Thompson. So we kind of hit it off there, and I powered through this interview. And I'll never forget. When I hung up the phone, I fell out of my chair and I crawled back to my bed, and just went to sleep. I guess the adrenaline must have dumped at that point. I didn't even call my business partner and be like, "Hey, dude, check this out." Right? I went to sleep, and then we went through all the different steps that happened. And what was interesting is that our first pitch was very, very corporate, very boardroom, very, hey, this is, just very business-esque. And we had gotten turned down. Like, we made it all the way up to LA to pre-taping, met the producers, all this stuff, and then we got bumped. And the reason they gave us why we got bumped was they told us at the time, well, Damon John's not going to be on and during this time frame, and he's the product guy, he's the clothing guy. We want you aligned with him. And now I mentioned when we were talking earlier that I had spent some time at the William Morris agency when I was in LA, which is now William Morris Endeavor. They're one of the big 4 talent agencies. So if you work in one of those agencies, you are exposed to the entire. I mean, I started in the mailroom, right, and it exposes you to the entire entertainment industry. And because I knew I had that time there, and I knew the background of how things worked, I remember telling my business partner, you know what, the reason they gave us is BS. Right? The reason they gave us is BS, right? Because nobody in Hollywood, typically nobody's going to tell you stink or you suck because, you could have the next Mission Impossible or Harry Potter franchise,
Yep.
right? So I thought something is off, right? Something is off. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to redo the pitch. So I completely stripped down the pitch, built it back from the ground up. And instead of being this sort of corporate, presentation, because what everyone has to remember when they're looking at Shark Tank or wanting to get on Shark Tank is it's entertainment first.
Yep.
It's entertainment first, right? It's a TV show. It's entertainment. It's entertainment first, business second. And so I did this whole crazy pitch. I went in the other direction with it, and I resubmitted it to our producer, basically on spec, which is when you do something on speculation that you're not getting paid to do it or whatever. So I did that and resubmitted it to her, and boom, she was like, "Yes, that's it, perfect." And bam, we were back in.
Well, I thought he would tell you that because it seems like when I interview people these days, they'll say that, hey, the producers wanted us to they wanted us to kind of, like you said, make it more entertaining. So why not say that back then and say, hey man, this is a little bit too corporate or too boring. Let's kind of spice this thing up a little bit, as opposed to just saying, hey, give you guys an excuse that they gave you.
Yeah, yeah. I wish they would have said that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they're throughout the seasons, it was difficult for them to, to get people to turn the corner and make things more entertainment. But yeah, I flipped the script completely and just went over the top with it. And that's what you see, in the air. And I remember telling Randy, or my business partner, I was like, look, I locked myself in my office. I shut off the phones, the email, I shut everything off. And I was like, I'm not coming out of here until I come out with our new pitch. Right. So I literally I forced myself to do it because I just knew the opportunity was, unparalleled or was,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I went after it. And then, we went up there and we did everything. And then, you could go through all those steps and you may not even air, right? There's no guarantee you're going to air, right? I mean, you could even be on the commercial for the, season opener or whatever, and then you may not air. So they call you about 2 weeks prior to airing and let you know. So you could kind of prep from that standpoint. But ultimately, you do this taping, and I mean, it was months later. It was, we did the taping 8 months prior to when it finally aired. And so, but it was great. I mean, it worked out beautifully.
Nice, nice, nice. And then it seems like I was watching a local news channel that you guys were on, where I think you were saying that you wanted to maybe do a deal with, or hoping to do a deal with maybe, yeah, Damon John, and then your partner was saying Lori, but it seems like Robert was the one ultimately who kind of, and I think maybe he gave you guys an offer, but also Mr. Wonderful as well. So were you guys
Yeah.
kind of surprised at that point in time that the two people that you guys thought would give you an offer, or that you guys wanted to work with at least, maybe didn't, and kind of two guys that you weren't maybe even expecting ended up at least giving you guys an offer at that point?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we were so set on Damon because he had the clothing background,
Sure.
so we thought he could apply that, that experience and that knowledge to everything. And so ultimately, when he said he didn't want to get into clothing production anymore, we totally understand because, just a side note, I mean, apparel manufacturing is a nightmare, right? It's a nightmare. It still has to be done by hand. You're still dealing with certain materials like cotton that have variances that need to be taken into consideration every time you run a lot or do a production run. There's shrinkages, there's different things that can happen. I mean, let's face it, those big stores like discount stores like Marshalls and Ross and TJ Maxx. I mean, they solely exist because the errors in the clothing in the clothing industry. I mean, you look at what's the biggest selection in there. The middle of the floor, it's all clothes, right?
Yep.
And then you have all the accessories and different stuff around the side. But so that's what's happening. So it's very difficult. So when Damon said, "Yeah, I don't want to get back into that space," like we get it. We were a little surprised because we thought ours was a little different because it's not like we're doing seasons and colors and
Yeah,
we
for
have one
sure.
product. We're like the Model T of the clothing
Yep.
industry. We're just cranking out the same product over and over. But he didn't, he said he didn't want to do it, which was a little bit of a bummer. And one thing I learned, and the one thing I would do differently if I was back on the show was I would have engaged in a little bit more of a counter. Like dig in deeper when you say no, why, this and that, and then how about this, how about that, just because, right? And Mark Cuban, he ended up not doing it. And so then our next, Lori, because she's the product person, right?
Yep.
She's the one that took products to QVC and this and that. I thought, okay, she's perfect too, right? Either one of those. And then when they both bowed out, it was like, ooh, this is unfortunate. Now, when Robert invested, I don't know if you saw the Clipper novel. The producer gave us a shot of him on a pull-up bar where he was pitting out.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. I did see that.
Yeah, so it worked out perfectly, and then, and we had a really big ask at that time too, especially. I mean, we were $700,000, and that was a pretty big ask at the time. So, I think we're still like probably one of the top 10, deals that had got shown on the show. So
Oh no, yeah, for sure. And I was gonna say that because it was like 700,000 for like 7%. I think it seems like you guys ultimately kind of maybe landed at 25%, which is still kind of multi-million dollar company at that point. But
yeah.
again, as you put it, $700,000 is a big ask, even if you're dealing with a technology company or whatever the case may be. So did they give you guys a lot of pushback, given the fact that, okay, this is an apparel company, as opposed, obviously we get off into the IP part of it, but it still was an apparel compared to like a technology company, which a lot of times you hear those higher ads because they can sell potentially from like higher multiples and things like that. So was that the case
Yeah.
with research?
Yeah, apparel is always a difficult space, right? It doesn't attract sort of the investment money that, like you said, I mean, technology that's the top, right? I mean, the scalability and the margins and the value that you can create with a piece of technology is vastly different than you can with a physical product, right? Just any physical product at that, because the supply chain and what goes into it, whether it's shirts or whatever it is, it's for you to distribute a piece of software to 1 million people, you just hit a couple buttons, right? For you to distribute 1 million units of something, you have to make those, right? You have to get them. Yeah, you have to move them, right? The logistics. So, but when I say it was a big ask too, it was a big ask for the show, right? Because usually you're seeing, 50,000, 100,000, right? This, like, so to come in there at 700,000 on the show was a pretty big ask. And yeah, of course there was pushback. I mean, that's why Robert, he went from 7% to 20 or 25% or something like that. And so, ultimately, and this is out there, ultimately we didn't ink the deal. My business partner and I decided that this probably wasn't in our best interest to ink the deal. Now we could always ask, oh, hey, what if? Now I know he probably would have had a retail, because the only logical step for us was to go retail, right? And that could have killed us in COVID, right? Like if we all of a sudden set up a retail channel and we were heavily reliant on that retail sector, well, during COVID, that could have put us in a very bad situation. So the fact that we controlled our customers, like as far as like the database, we had all their information, that we were servicing them. We could market directly to them, sell the product directly to them. We did launch, because we have cotton and material, we did launch masks during COVID. So that helped out a lot. We sold several $1 million worth of masks. We donated, over 40,000 masks, because we were running a special at the time. If you buy 3, we donate 4. And what we did a little different is we actually showed on our website the product getting dropped off and who was going to. Because at that time, there was everyone saying, oh, we're going to donate masks and be this and that. Nobody ever, you never know where it went, right? Like you have no idea. So we said, no, we're going to be transparent about it, and we're going to show everybody where it went. So, yeah, so it was a big ask, but ultimately, we didn't ink the deal, and who knows? Maybe we're sitting here, what if? Like, gosh, what if we did? What would have happened? So who knows?
But I think things worked out the way they needed to work out, and it seems like you guys are definitely still alive and all as well. So it seems like you guys are doing something right on your end. I want to talk about a little bit with the IP part. Did you know about intellectual property? And again, I know your background was marketing and sales. So did you know about maybe number one, intellectual property, whether it was patents, trademarks, and copyrights? And then at what point, I guess the follow-up to that question is, at what point did you say, okay, I have something, again, the shirt that's, like I said, this is a different shirt from your typical shirt because you have a patent on this shirt. And I'll tell you this, or the audience, a lot of people don't understand, it's somewhat difficult to get a patent on like fabric like that on shirts, on apparel, just because like, okay, it's a shirt. So it's like, okay, you buy a patent shirt and keep people from like being able to sell or kind of manufacture a shirt.
Yeah.
So that can be a little bit more difficult compared to like a typical product or a pen or whatever the case may be. So I guess I'll kind of open it up to you in terms of those questions on IP and patents and things like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think when I first learned about patents. I can't pinpoint a time. I just felt like maybe it came up in sort of general sort of conversations. I just had this knowledge that it existed out there at a very young age. So I don't remember exactly when or why or how. Now, when I started working on this product, now I don't know if I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this. Like when I started working on this product, the laws were first to invent, not first to file, right? So now it's first to file, right? So I think, gosh, well, how old what was I in high school? I think I might have been my senior year in high school. I started looking at this concept. I started dabbling with it, and then definitely revisited it during, later years in college. But I had bought a book. It was called From Patent to Profit. So I knew about patents, but I was like, I didn't really know. I knew they existed. I knew what their what they were meant to do, but I didn't really understand the process. So I bought this book From Patent to Profit, read through that, got acclimated to that. And I always knew that, a product like this that doesn't exist on the market, I knew that if we could patent it, then, there's potential licensing opportunities, there's barrier to entries for other companies getting involved. So I thought this was something that needed to happen. And to your point about apparel, yes, it is difficult to patent apparel because there's really not much you could do that isn't already out there, right? Because once it becomes general knowledge in the public domain, well, then there's no proprietary there. You can't patent it. So, but what we had designed, and it's a utility patent, is that you can't just, slap a waterproof piece of something on your skin, right? Because it's like sitting on a leather couch without your shirt on. You're going to sweat. It's actually going to make the problem worse, right? So for something that is very rudimentary in that, like, oh, we have this shirt that blocks underarm sweat, there was a lot of design elements that went into creating a layering system independent of each other that would also create sort of a billowing effect. When you move your arms, you're going to bring in moisture, right? That also contribute to the evaporative cooling part of the wearability and the comfort of our product. So we had designed this layering system. Again, you have with stitches and stuff, you're going to punch holes in things. So there is a lot of stuff that went into creating this product, so that it could be comfortable. I mean, I wanted it to be comfortable. I wanted it to be effective, right? And I wanted it to be washable and dryable, just like a regular undershirt. I didn't want any treatments. I didn't want something that would wear out. I wanted this to be a fundamental piece of the shirt, so that way it could last forever, right? Last as long as you wear your undershirts. And so that's kind of how the whole patent and IP stuff came up. So I worked with the patent attorney, and we did the provisional patent application, right, which buys you some time, doesn't cost you as much money, right? So we ended up doing that. And then, of course, I kept all those documents from when I started doing the research, way back, right? That way, if there was ever an issue of first to invent, versus first to file, you could lean on that, right?
Yep.
So that's really how the patent, the patent thing came about.
So did you have any issues with someone, or whether it was the patent office giving you some cited art to say, hey, this is kind of before your application was filed, and then you have to kind of pull up this paperwork to say, well, I actually was working on this back in 2008 or whatever the case may be?
Well, yeah, we never got into a situation where I had to pull that card. One thing we learned, and you probably know this, is that, your patent, and I don't want to discourage anybody from getting a patent, but your patent is only as good as the money you have to defend it.
Yeah.
Right. And you lawyers are not cheap, right? Especially you patent lawyers. My goodness. I remember the first time we had a conversation with our patent attorney in the very, very early years, and we got off track. We started talking about some other stuff. And next thing you know, I got this bill for this call. And I was like, oh man, no. From here on out, it's straight bid. It's going to be boom, 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 boom. All right. Thank you. Boom. That meter is running. So, but yeah.
So he charged you just for the side conversations that you guys were having as well?
Yeah, I mean, who knows if he did it intentionally? I mean, you guys know how this thing works. You're billing for hours, you're billing for time. You put this in there, you see it started here and ended here. So, but no, he's a great attorney. He's still our IP attorney. He's a great attorney. Became a great friend of ours. So it worked out really well. But yeah, I just remember thinking, and he's not cheap, right? Because then he's good. So it's like, okay, well, you're going to pay that penny. But we ran into a situation early on where we had a knockoff product. And, so we sent them the cease and desist letter. And long story short, it was cheaper for us to pay him to go away than it was to take the next step in the legal proceeding. And I'll never forget when I was talking to the guy, I said, you know what? I was like, it really bothers me that you knock us off and I have to actually pay you, right? Like, just the fact that I got to pay you to go away. But it was a business decision. That was an emotional response, but it was a business decision. Like, we could take this guy to the next step, but it'll cost us. And it was marginal back then. It was very early on, but it was like, it'll cost us this much, or I can offer him a little less than what it would cost. And if he decides to take it, well, then problem solved. And that's ultimately the route we went, where it was like, okay, remember, what is your objective? What is the best way to get there? You know that emotions and rationale are on two opposite spectrums. Yep. So anyways, that was just, again, but it just felt wrong, right? It just felt like, you knocked me off and I got to pay you. Like, what? This is weird. But, it is what it is. It's a business decision. It's all about dollars and cents at that point. And so, I realized that, like, you're going to defend your patent, as you're going to spend a lot of money. Yep. So you have to decide at that point. And that was the other thing. This guy was so small, he had no damages. Like, he had nothing. So we couldn't get any damages, right? So at the end of the day, it was like, all right, it is what it is. But, you have to decide, is my attention and my resources, my money, is it better spent towards, trying to shut someone down or defend that patent versus putting that back into the business and growing the business and beating them in the market, right? Because, look, Me Too products, very few of them succeed. Right. And we're the market leader. And you look out there right now, there's a ton of products out there. We spawned this entire sort of niche industry where now everyone's starting to make the same thing. But at the end of the day, is their product quality the same? Is their production, is their supply chain, the quality there? And then are they customer service? I was a huge, huge believer in customer service, right, from the get-go. I thought we have to. And that's a differentiator. You could copy the product, you can copy the marketing, you can copy all that stuff, but you can't copy the people that are interacting with your customers. That can't be copied. So that was always going to be a competitive advantage for us. And we decided to sort of compete on that angle because, spending $100,000 on a patent defense that may go on for years, that may not actually result in anything. It was like, we're better spending it somewhere else. Now, don't get me wrong. We still have a radar. We're very well aware of all the people who are knocking us off. and we have a list, right? We got our hit list of people to potentially go down and talk to. So at some point that could happen.
Right, and I was gonna ask you, I know Amazon, I know you said 40% of your guys' sales are from Amazon, and I know they have the Apex program, which typically, especially when you're talking about Chinese knockoffs, it's a little easier to kind of come to an agreement with that, just because it seems like from my understanding, Chinese are a lot more willing to, kind of to settle, and with Amazon and Apex program, you having a patent, you can kinda show them that, "Hey, they're infringing our patent." That should it the way it should work is should be a less expensive way to enforce it on Amazon compared to kind of going to the court route. So have you guys took advantage of that at all, or?
Yeah, you know what, David? I mean, this is going back. I remember when the IP protection sort of option opened up with Amazon, and I can't remember how it went, and I can't remember if we had to utilize it. We may have, because there was a couple out there, but I don't recall it being as clean cut and easy as you tell
Got it.
Amazon that they're infringing, Amazon
Yep.
shuts them down, right?
Yep.
There was still a process that was
Yep.
involved. There
Okay.
was still time, energy, and resources that became, part of the process. So, at the end of the day, it wasn't. I wish it was that easy, right? But like everything else, right? This is why we have attorneys, right? It's the whole gray area, it's the
Yep.
interpretation, all that
Yep.
stuff needs to be discussed and sorted out, right? So, but yeah, to answer your question, we don't. I remember dealing with the intellectual property program through Amazon, but I can't remember the details of it.
Got you. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. And kind of maybe moving on from there, you talked about business being kind of ups and downs. It's not like a linear progression where you're just
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
going up and up and up.
yeah,
What would you say, as another two-part question, was the biggest breakthrough out of everything that, and again, you've been around for some time now. What is the biggest breakthrough
yeah.
that you think Thompson Tees had up until this point in time? And then on the flip side of that, what was the biggest challenge that you had to overcome? Maybe it's COVID, maybe it's those early days and having to deal with the $100,000 credit card debt. But what would I
Yeah.
say was on the flip side of that, that the biggest challenge that the business had to overcome?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's one of the big breakthroughs I remember is when we actually figured out how to make this product production ready, right? Like anybody can design one product, right? But can you produce it? Is it scalable? And is it reliably scalable? And so, we had figured out a way to design this thing, and that's when we realized, oh, okay, boom, we got something, we're off to the races. So that was a huge breakthrough. And I know I talked about it earlier. It's not like we had this sort of crazy aha moment where all of a sudden, sales just took off, and that was the one catalyst that it. I mean, we just slowly grinded. We slowly grinded. It was one customer at a time. It was me reaching out to bloggers. It was PR. It was everybody just getting the word out about this product because we didn't have the money to advertise. So it was just get this product out there, let people know about it, and it was this kind of slow and steady thing. A major breakthrough obviously was Shark Tank. I mean, that was a big pivotal moment in our business. And then you have all of these mini victories all the way through there, right? Where it's just I remember in the early days it was like, gosh, I remember telling my business partner, like, man, I feel like a firefighter, right? Because every day I'm just feel like I'm putting out fires. That's all I'm doing. I'm just putting out fires. What's going on? What's this? What's that? Where's this? Where's this? Like boom, 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 boom. And then now we have a great team that works with us. And so now it's shifted. You're not dealing with necessarily the day-to-day fires. You have a team that can handle that. But the reality is that we have such a good team in place. But any problems that do reach me, right, they've been distilled down to become the most difficult problems that the rest of the team can't handle and only we can handle. So you're constantly dealing with that as well. But as far as like challenges go, well, in the very beginning it was how do we get the word out? We have no money, right? And then we relied on PR, relied on stuff like this, and so that really helped us, right? And then it was okay, how do we keep growing, right? How do we keep growing? How do we keep going? How can we lower costs? How can we increase sales? All of that stuff. Digital marketing. When COVID hit, COVID was a huge challenge. Our product is a public sort of product, meaning if you're not going outside of your house and you're not out there, well, who cares how much you're sweating, right? Like nobody cares. And and then this whole not return to work, return to the office thing. If you're at home working from home, well, people don't need to sweat. So there was a massive, massive challenge. Our sales fell off a cliff, and whatnot. And so dealing with that, and we had to do what we had to do to pivot and
Yep.
and make sure it happened. Now, I'm proud to say that we didn't lose a single person during COVID as far as employees
Nice.
go.
Nice.
We kept everybody. Right, we kept everyone. Nobody got pay cuts except for my business partner and I. We kept
That's for the
everybody. So
leadership, man. Because a lot of times people, like you said, they'll get rid of maybe a couple employees, and so that they can continue to get paid the big bucks. But to do it in reverse, I think that's definitely a good form of leadership. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, when you have good people, they're hard, they're hard, good people are hard to find, right? And so I don't want to lose any of our people, right? So at the end of the day, it was like, we're not going to lose our people. We're going to get through this. We're going to power through this. And so the challenges that face us now, and this is what also I want everyone to understand is that, businesses are always going to present challenges. Bottom line, it's always going to be problem solution, problem solution. It doesn't matter how big or small you get. As a matter of fact, the problems just get bigger because they get more costly. Right. And I'll never forget when I thought, oh, you work so hard to get to a level where you're like, okay, I can cover my bills. I can do that, and this and that. And what I discounted was like, oh, to stay at this level requires a lot. You don't just get there and just chill, right? You get there and it's like, oh my gosh, to maintain this level, right? It's like, wow, it's like kind of like your like a physique, right? You get your physique in the top form. Well, you can't just kick back. Like you got to keep training that and keep working. So that was an eye opener too. And then so when COVID hit, costs just went through the roof because everybody went digital. So now that digital marketing playbook that we had that was working very well, the costs are just now through the roof. Customer acquisition costs, advertising costs, everything got super expensive. So the challenges we're facing now is, how do we preserve the bottom line, right? How do we preserve the bottom line? How do we make sure we have a profit because of the increasing costs? Right. And so we had to do a bunch of stuff. We had moved our supply chain. I mean, they shut down the U.S. supply chain. And so we had no choice. We were USA made for the longest, right? 100% USA made. They shut it down. We had no choice. We had to go to Mexico, right? So we had to shift supply chains. Now we have product coming out of India again. And then we bust our butt for a whole year to lower our cost of goods to preserve margin. And then now there's talks of these tariffs that could basically eat up a lot of the margins. So we do all this. So meaning, I just say all this, meaning like it's always ever evolving. Doesn't matter what stage of the business you are. It's always going to be ebbs and flows, challenges that are happening. But yeah, some of the biggest challenges in the early days was getting the word out. And then obviously in the later stages, it was getting through COVID and navigating all of that. But there's always going to be, something that you're dealing with, right?
And I think that's just really a good way to look at life. I think just life in general is similar to that, where it's like it's always things that you're dealing with that you have to overcome, that you think you get to a good spot, the next thing you know, something else is happening. So it's almost like just dealing with understanding that you have to deal with life's or challenges that kind of come with the day-to-day life, but then also you can extrapolate that to, like I said, business, whether you're doing it for yourself, if you're on a job, there's going to be challenges that kind of come with it. And that's kind of really why is my pitch. I'm just kind of get people. There's a lot of people don't think that they can kind of deal with it or maybe handle it. And I guess some people, I guess for that matter, maybe can't. But it seems like, at least the way I'm looking at it, is nothing that you're not already kind of maybe dealing with, whether it's kind of life or on a job. I know I'm trying to get some work done today with the law firm, and I'm in real estate, so I'm renovating one of my properties so I can get another tenant in there. So I'm kind of dealing with the contractors on that, and it's always dealing with something. It's like, okay, it's kind of part of the situation.
It's
Hopefully
life.
you get kind of more so used to it, and it's like, okay, you kind of deal with it without panicking and kind of going crazy, and hopefully you get better at it, similar to like sales, get better at sales as you continue to pitch and kind of deal with it. And
I think
go ahead.
You're right, David. I think what's important to your point about these problems, and I think it's very important, especially for the younger generations and whatnot, especially in this time that we live in, where everyone's got their glossed up marketing brochure in the form of Instagram and whatever. You're seeing a manufactured piece, and so it's very easy to think, especially when you're dealing with that fear of problems or dealing with problems. It's very easy to think, oh well, if I just had so and so's life, or if I just had such and such money, if I just had this and that. And so, what I realized, having dealt, in the entertainment industry, having dealt with very high net worth individuals. I mean, these are some of the most wealthiest people in the country, some of the most famous people in the country. And having been, spent time with them, is that and everyone needs to know this. It doesn't matter who you are, how great everything seems. They have problems. And they have a lot of similar problems, and they have a lot of extra problems because of that fame and that fortune, right? And so does that make them any more happy? I would venture to say probably not. I mean, having that kind of notoriety is a liability in today's day and age, right? And so I would love to get that message out to your listeners, or to anyone out there, that like, hey, you are going through problems. Don't think that someone else's life is perfect. Don't think that nobody has problems. Understand that problems are inevitable. It's a human condition, and every single person out there, I don't care how great you think their life is, they got problems
Yeah.
and they're dealing with it too. So don't think, oh, woe is me, and fall into like, why is this happening to me? It's happening to other people out there across the spectrum. And so just know that as you're dealing with these things. But you're right, you got to deal with life's problems, and you're not, you're not exception. You're not
Yep.
special. That's why I say, we're not special. So at the end of the day, we got to deal with it too, right? And so I don't look at that stuff and think, oh, I wish I had this life. I wish I could be that person, because you don't know what that person's going through. You could get over there, you could get over there and realize that, man, they got a lot more crap going on than what you do. And, you want your life back. So I just I want to get that out there and let everybody know that. And so also too, I think there's this fascination with wealth. There's this fascination with cars and mansions and luxury items and this and that. And like, a lot of people don't realize, like, especially the young people, it's like, no, that's the wrong dream. Right. That's the wrong dream. You know what it takes to acquire a mansion? Not just that. You realize what it takes to manage a mansion, right? The team of people that are going to be in and out of your house. I mean, it's just, Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett, those guys are notorious for, what they did. And both of them never went out and bought mega estates where they clearly can afford it. And they had said that, like, all of their friends that went out and bought these mega estates, it actually took away from their quality of life.
Sure.
Right? Because it's like you're managing a mini motel, right? And so nobody thinks about that stuff. They think, oh, I just see the pretty picture and the pretty brochure. But when you get in there and you peel back the onion, you realize, oh, this isn't as good as I thought it was. Matter of fact, there's a lot of crap that I got to deal with, with this stuff, right? So I really think that the younger generation needs to see that, because, they think fame is, everyone's chasing this TikTok, viral this, viral that. And it's like, you don't realize the liability that comes with fame. Right.
Sure.
Like issues and the hate. I mean, all of that stuff, it comes with it. They don't talk about it that much because, it's counter to their image. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of crap that, fame brings to the table that, quite frankly, isn't worth it.
No, for sure. And I definitely agree with that. And I always say, man, I just kind of maybe give you the money and not the fame. Like you said, the
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
issues as well. But But yeah, the fame seems like, especially in this day and age, the kind of the lawsuits and this and that, people coming out the woodworks, it seems like
yeah,
more of a liability than ever, unfortunately. So, all right, I definitely agree with you on that. And then I guess just kind of as we kind of close out here, being respectful of your time, just the final two questions.
Yep.
Number one is, what advice, and you gave a ton of advice, so thank you for that, for people to kind of think about and ponder, whether it's young people, older people, people who starting a business, maybe starting a business. But I always like to ask the guests, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs? Somebody who maybe are kind of thinking about getting off into the game, they're doing this double dutch. Do I get off into entrepreneurship? Do I not? I have a product, I have a service that I want to kind of bring out to the world. What advice would you give to someone like that?
Well, I mean, the most ideal advice, and unfortunately, life doesn't work out really in ideals. But I mean, if you can balance whatever you're doing while you're building, then great, right? Because you need income, right? So I would always say to anybody aspiring to possibly ever do their own thing, whether it's now or down the road, save your money. Save your money, because you're going to need that during those startup phases, right? You're going to need that money. You're always going to need money. Every small business out there to this day, and even medium-sized businesses, they're all undercapitalized, right? We're all undercapitalized, right? We're all having to be very, very mindful of the money and this, and of course, I wish I had $1 million to dump in advertising right now, right? I mean, or an additional $1 million, right? That would be great. But so it would be save your money, right? Save your money. You don't need Starbucks every single day, right? Go get a Keurig and buy those 70-cent pods and drink that coffee, right? You don't need that BMW or that Audi or that whatever luxury car you're getting, right? You don't need that stuff. That stuff don't mean anything, right? So when you're, and of course I made this mistake, right? I mean, I was making good money selling private jets, and so I was single, no kids, so I was spending it, right? I was spending it. And then I remember when I was in startup mode, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I remember going through the list of crap. Like, if I just had that cash right now, that would be amazing, right? Like, that would be amazing. So I would say save your money. Number one, save your money. And then number two, if you're going to, surround yourself with people who have this knowledge, right? Talk to as many people as you can in that space, right? And most people are going to be receptive. Most people are going to be receptive to, someone who wants to go out there and hustle, right? Because you see, it's so few. It's a 1%. Quality, right? Like people go out there who are hustling and they have that drive and that motivation. A lot of people who have done it, they're going to want to give back to that, right? They're going to want to give back to that person who is really aspiring to do it. So set up your interviews, get mentors, and just, leverage whatever resources you can, become super frugal with it. And that's really what I would say as far as anyone looking to get into it. Obviously, if there's any sales experience, if you can get that, that's great. But you could grind it out. And I would say this to kind of close out the last piece of advice is, I mean, you got to want that success as much as you want to breathe.
I like that.
right? You have to, right? Because I mean, again, if it was easy, everybody else would do it, right? So you gotta chase it with everything you got, and just put all you got into it, because here's the thing, you're athlete, you're a competitor.
Yep.
If you don't put in the work, you don't deserve to win, because that other guy is putting in the work.
Putting in the work.
You know what I mean? They're
Yep.
putting in the work, right?
Yep.
They are putting in the work. So I would say just, be ready for that. And I don't want to discourage anyone from doing it, but if you set your expectation at a certain level where it's going to be brutally difficult, then if it's not, then, it's one of those things, right? Where you get in there and it's, oh, this wasn't as bad as I thought, and you can
Right.
get through with it. But if you get in there and you're like, oh, I wasn't ready for this, well, it could stop you right then and there. So I would say expect the worst, understand it's part of the process, embrace the grind, and you have to earn it.
No, for sure. No, I definitely agree with everything. And again, it's just the kind of realities of entrepreneurship, starting a business, and kind of dealing with the competition. Because, like you said, if you don't want it, you're going to have some competitors who want it and is willing to put in that extra
Yes,
time. So that's
exactly.
something that you really want. Then you'll probably kind of think twice about it. And then the last question, and maybe the most important question, is how can people follow you as well as purchase the product?
Oh, yeah. So the product, we're at thompsontee.com, right? Very simple, thompsontee.com. And then we're on Amazon. So you can get the product those two ways. We're direct to consumer. We ship out same day, if orders come in, but, prior to a certain time, we have a cutoff, but we get things out very fast. Obviously, Amazon has Prime, so you get stuff out there. So if you want the product, go ahead and, get it there. We have a 30-day unconditional satisfaction guarantee, whether you wear it, wash it, whatever. That's how much we believe in the product. So you can get it there. And then I'm on LinkedIn, right? So I'm on LinkedIn. Obviously, any inquiries into my company, my customer service team will eventually get to me, but you can directly find me on LinkedIn.
There you go. And then I'll definitely put those links with the LinkedIn and with the Thompson Tee, and maybe even an Amazon link down in the description once the video comes out. What
Yeah.
about IG? I know sometimes people kind of can be a hit
Oh,
with IG.
yeah. You know what? I mean, for me personally, I don't have really, this is awful, right? But I don't really have a social media presence for me personally. We do have them on the company. So we got an
Okay.
IG, we got a TikTok,
Nice.
the company does have those.
Okay.
But, me personally, I don't know. I guess I don't feel like I'm that important and I need to be putting content out there that people need to look at. So
No, definitely will. We'll definitely put those social media handles for the company in the description once the interview comes out. Hopefully, audience, you guys had your pencils and your papers out. Billy dropped a lot of great information, great advice, and hopefully, you guys maybe have to go back and listen to it because he dropped a lot of nuggets in this one. And again, until next time, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. We will see you guys next week.
Yeah, David, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, David. I mean, I think what you're doing is great here, putting it out there. You're definitely hustling right now with, your full-time gig and then doing all these things on the side. It's really awesome. It's inspirational. So I wish you the best of success with this.
No, for sure. Absolutely, Billy. No, I definitely appreciate that. And hey, audience, you guys take care. Have a good one.